Hi everyone, this video is going to be on how to race your best in a running race, a cycling race, or a triathlon race, which anyone that I've ever come across who's raced would like to perform their best on race day, so I'm going to try and help you do that. And really there are three big things that I would say, at least from the athletes I've coached and the people that I've watched, it typically boils down into three different categories as far as mistakes that they make and things that they do that don't necessarily allow them to utilize or realize their fullest potential when they're actually racing on race day. And the first one in regards to that is pacing. And pacing is absolutely huge. I should preface all of this with saying that when I'm referring to these races and talking about some of these things, it's really, I would say, in anything above an Olympic distance triathlon. So anything probably longer than 2:15 or 2.5 hours in length, which, unless you're Kenyan, I guess, would encompass a marathon for pretty much anyone. And, a half Ironman, things like that. So the first one is pacing, and it is absolutely critical that you have at least even pacing or a negative split. I always tell people that I've worked with, for every minute you gain going above and beyond where you should be early in a race, you're going to give back at least 2 minutes later on. It just will happen that way. This has to be identified in training as far as what paces you can sustain and what feels comfortable. But really, like if you're doing a triathlon, the beginning of every sport you do should feel pretty comfortable. First part of the swim should feel comfortable. First part of the bike should feel comfortable and easy. And the first couple miles of a run should feel like a warm-up. If you go too hard on those spots, you will give back all of that time and then some later in the race. I've seen it happen countless times, so focus on a negative split, meaning that the second half of whatever you're doing is faster than the first half. That's the way to execute your best race. So that's the first one, is pacing. The second one is nutrition. Nutrition, you absolutely have to have at least 200 calories an hour when you are racing. 200 is probably the absolute lowest you would have. Most are closer to 300. If you're a larger person, you can be as high as 400. And if you do not take this in, you are guaranteed to bonk towards the end of the race. It will happen, and I've seen it happen. It's just a physiological certainty. It has nothing to do with willpower. It has nothing to do with motivation. It just basically means your car runs out of gas or your body runs out of fuel. And if you don't get in the 200 calories an hour, this will happen to you. Again, it is something that you have to identify when you're out there training, because everybody has different tolerances, I think to different foods, and you have to identify what's going to work for you with kind of race day jitters and also the intensity that you're going to be racing at. So second one is nutrition. Third one, and in my opinion the most important, is you have to have the proper mental focus and the proper attitude. Now, I see a lot of people that expend a lot of energy and waste a lot of energy and get very stressed over things that they can't control. Don't worry about what the person next to you is doing. Don't worry about the weather. Don't worry about the bumpy bike course that you're going to have on the bike. Don't worry about the hills. You can't control any of those things. Everybody's going to be out there experiencing the same thing. You have to focus on what you can control. And the only things that you can really control on race day are your attitude and what happens to you during the race, and your effort. And I guess when I say effort, I also mean the movements of your body, because I have a lot of my athletes focus on what we call process cues, and process cues are basically movements that you make when you're, let's say that you're running. It would be things like staying relaxed in the arms and shoulders, flicking the heels up, proper breathing, bending your knees, lengthening out your stride, leaning, whatever it might be. Those would all be examples of process cues, but those are all things that they can control. They're not worried about anything else, and they're always keeping a positive attitude, because there could be lots of ups and downs in races. There are lots of peaks and valleys, and you have to be prepared to stay on an even keel when a race is going on. Don't get too high and don't get too low. So again, to recap the three things, you got proper pacing with a negative split, nutrition in the form of at least 200 calories an hour, and having proper focus and mental attitude on race day, which is controlling the things that you can control and then letting the other things fall by the wayside. Cheers to your best performance.